corporations now that have dropped DEI. Now, in the government, they did it because he ordered...
Backlash for what?
For too much DEI.
I don't think those people understand what DEI is. DEI is not the hiring of black people who are not qualified or
it can
people
be.
who are... No. That's not what it's about.
It can have that result.
But anything can...
Bill Maher absolutely dismantling Don Lemon's woke worldview. Was Maher the only one speaking common sense? You bet. Let's talk about why the idea that half the country, the entire MAGA movement, is just a bunch of racists is not only lazy, but dangerously wrong. And what's the deal with DEI? Is it about real opportunity, or has it become another way to push divisive ideologies? We're cutting through the noise and giving you the conservative Republican take on this explosive conversation. Stay tuned.
They did one thing, they did a sketch where Tom Hanks puts on a MAGA hat, so he's a Trumper, and then Keenan comes over to shake his hand, and he won't shake his hand.
Yeah.
And I said this on Fareed's show the other day. I found that that's so old. You know, I didn't vote for him. I get all the bad things about that administration, but if you think they don't shake black people's hands, it's just you're wrong. That's not who they are. Matt Gaetz shakes black people's hands. You know, Kid Rock will shake your hand. It's just not helpful to like think that half the country that's where they are. That's your step.
Still, you're a comedian. You know, it's part of its comedy.
I understand.
But let's be honest. There's a huge faction of the MAGA movement that's really fucking racist.
I wouldn't say huge, no.
All right, everyone. I want to dive into a recent conversation between Bill Maher and Don Lemon on Maher's Club Random podcast. Now, as a conservative, right-leaning Republican, it probably won't surprise you to hear that I found myself nodding along quite a bit more with Maher than with Lemon. Let's be clear from the jump. I believe Bill Maher brought a much-needed dose of common sense to a conversation that often gets lost in the weeds of what I'd call overly progressive rhetoric. We saw in those clips how Maher challenged some of Don Lemon's woke takes, and frankly, it was refreshing.
I'd say
I would say huge.
Yeah, okay. Well, we have different perspectives.
I would say huge. And even if they're not, you have to overlook a lot of that in order to support Donald Trump, which I think is maybe even more egregious than just saying I'm a racist.
So what do you think is the worst? I mean, to me, the back in, was it 89 with the Central Park 5?
Yeah.
That was, to me, like the most egregious thing because it just seems so like, and then, of course, the Obama birth certificate, which...
You mean with Donald Trump?
With Trump.
What's the most egregious?
Yeah, I mean, he sued me, Trump did.
For the orangutan thing.
Yes, because I was making fun of that because that was very racist. But also, like, he seemed to be there was something very animating about his just laser-focused drive about the Central Park 5 thing. That seemed to...
Now, I want to offer my own perspective here, building on some of the themes that emerged. One of the big topics, and one that really grinds my gears as a conservative, is this constant drumbeat about systemic racism permeating everything, particularly within the MAGA movement. Look, are there racists in America? Sadly, yes. Are there likely some within the diverse group of people who supported Donald Trump? Statistically, probably. But to paint the entire movement with that broad brush, to suggest that not shaking a black person's hand is some kind of defining characteristic, that's just divisive and frankly lazy thinking. As a Republican, I believe in individual responsibility and judging people on their merits, not on their group identity, to constantly assign negative motivations based on someone's political affiliation, especially when it comes to race, is a dangerous path. It shuts down productive dialogue and reinforces the very divisions we should be trying to overcome. Attributing the worst traits of a few to millions of voters, as was touched upon in the discussion, is intellectually dishonest and politically unmotivated.
For office.
It was right.
Yeah.
It just seemed like there's something in him. And of course, we know his father was a virulent racist.
Yeah.
You know, and he grew up in a different time, and he's almost 80. And yes, I understand that element to it. But, you know, to ascribe to all the people who voted for him, which is a majority of the country.
I didn't say all the people.
Yeah, I understand.
It's not a majority. It's plurality.
Well, whatever it is, he won.
Yeah.
It's at least half the country. I mean, to ascribe his worst traits to all of them.
I don't think it's half the country, but go on.
Well,
what is
what is it?
To whatever?
How do you win an election?
Well,
and the popular
first it's
vote.
the electorate. Not everybody votes, and I don't think I think most of the people in America don't vote, and I don't think it's half the country. So what I'm saying is, I don't think half the country is racist, and I don't think all of MAGA is racist. But I do think that there's a huge element in the MAGA party that is racist, whether they are conscious of it or not. Some of them are not, and if they are not, they have had to overlook a lot of racism and a lot of bigotry. And if you do that and you say, I'm okay with this, I think that makes you worse than someone who just says, hey, I'm a racist, and they tell you.
But some of it is just a backlash to what they think was going too far, like all these corporations now that have dropped DEI. Now, in the government, they did it because he ordered...
Backlash for what?
For too much DEI.
I don't think those people understand what DEI is. DEI is not the hiring of black people who are not qualified or
it can
people
be.
Who are... No. That's not what it's about.
Then we got into the discussion about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, on the surface, who could argue with diversity and inclusion? Sounds great, right? But the way DEI has been implemented in many corporations, and yes, even seeped into government, has become deeply problematic in my view. The shift from equality, equal opportunity for all, to equity, often interpreted as equal outcomes through preferential treatment, is a fundamental change with serious consequences. From a conservative standpoint, I believe in meritocracy. People should be hired, promoted, and admitted to institutions based on their qualifications, their hard work, and their demonstrated abilities. When DEI initiatives start to prioritize demographic targets over merit, that's where we run into our trouble. It can lead to qualified individuals being overlooked, and it can foster resentment among those who feel they're being unfairly disadvantaged. The point made about whether DEI leads to unqualified individuals being hired is a crucial one. While proponents argue it's about broadening the pool of qualified candidates, the reality in practice can often look very different. We see instances where the focus shifts from finding the most qualified person to ensuring a certain quota is met. As a conservative, I believe this undermines the principles of fairness and excellence.
I don't know about that.
Okay, so then what is your evidence? There's no evidence that there is that result. If you can show me the evidence, then okay, then I will agree with you.
Well, I'm not going to name any names.
Okay, but diversity, equity, inclusion, first of all, is not, maybe they're talking about affirmative action, which is a whole different thing, which is about making sure you hired, a certain number of people that are this, that, and that. But diversity, equity, and inclusion is about making sure that the pool of candidates is larger. So if you are fishing, rather than fishing in a swimming pool, maybe you're in a pond. Rather than fishing in a pond, you're in a lake, or maybe in a lake instead of a river, or in a river and you're in the ocean. So you're just trying to find different people, and you're trying to increase the number of options of qualified people that you can hire. It's not about hiring people who are not qualified.
Furthermore, the idea that disagreeing with the current iteration of DEI automatically makes you a racist is a tactic used to shut down legitimate concerns. Reasonable people can have differing opinions on the best way to achieve a more inclusive society without harboring any racial animus. Labeling dissent as bigotry is a form of intellectual bullying that stifles necessary debate. Bill Maher, to his credit, seemed to be pushing back on some of these more extreme viewpoints, seeking a more nuanced understanding. He highlighted the common sense reality that people across the political spectrum can and do interact positively, regardless of race.
And who are just black. The biggest recipient of DEI is white women, and also veterans, because of veterans, and also people who are disabled people. It's just about making sure that disabled people have a ramp somewhere at work so that they get to work and they can,
but
whatever.
Equity is the word, not equality. That it was a change that people noticed. Equality was everybody gets an equal shot. Equity is like, no, it's basically quotas. Equity is
It's quotas. I don't think that America's never been about everybody getting an equal shot.
No, it certainly hasn't been. No one's contesting that.
No.
But that's what the idea, the old school liberal idea was: we need to strive for equality. That changed to equity. This is what some people are against, and reasonable people can disagree on it without being racist. Having said that, there are of course racists in this country. There always will be, just like there will always be criminals.
I agree, but I think the people who are disagreeing about it, they need to understand exactly what it is. I think people who disagree may not understand what it is. Now, I have an issue with DEI because I think when you make it a religion...
This isn't to say racism doesn't exist, but it's crucial to maintain perspective and avoid painting vast swaths of the population with the same negative brush. As conservatives, we believe in the fundamental goodness of the American people and the principles this nation was founded upon: individual liberty and equal opportunity. While we acknowledge the historical injustices and the need for continued progress, we reject the narrative that America is inherently and irredeemably racist. We believe in working towards a society where everyone has a fair shot, but that shot should be based on their individual merits, not on their identity group. As conservatives, we believe in the fundamental goodness of the American people and the principles this nation was founded upon: individual liberty and equal opportunity. While we acknowledge the historical injustices and the need for continued progress, we reject the narrative that America is inherently and irredeemably racist. We believe in working towards a society where everyone has a fair shot, but that shot should be based on their individual merits, not on their identity group. Wrapping this up, the exchange between Bill Maher and Don Lemon highlighted a significant divide in how we perceive issues of race, politics, and opportunity in America. From my conservative Republican perspective, Maher's skepticism towards some of the more extreme woke viewpoints, particularly regarding the MAGA movement and the implementation of DEI, resonated strongly. We need more voices willing to challenge these narratives with common sense and a focus on individual merit rather than resorting to broad generalizations and accusations. What are your thoughts? Do you agree with Bill Maher's approach? Where do you stand on the issues of DEI and the accusations of racism within the MAGA movement? Let's get a conversation going in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the Black Coffee Podcast for more real talk on the issues that matter. Thanks for tuning in.